Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt here with Alyx King and Joel Elston. Today is Thursday, September the 5th, 2019. It is 8 a.m. in New York. That's 5 a.m. Los Angeles time. And that means it's 1 p.m. in London. And that would be, I believe, 9 p.m. in Tokyo, 10 p.m. in Sydney. But wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I just wanted to kind of get things started by telling people that you can expect to see some changes coming within the next few days on our schedule. We'll still be doing 5 days a week. We're going to be aiming more toward doing afternoon podcasts, New York time. I don't know what all of the schedule is going to be. The one that we do here with Joel on Thursday is the one that's most up in the air, but we are going to figure it out. So just stay tuned. You'll be able, if you're this is a reason why you want to be a subscriber, because if you're a subscriber, it's just automatically coming to your phone. Yep. I mean, you don't even have to think about it. It doesn't matter what time of day we do it. You don't have to know when the live stream is or anything. Mm-hmm. And so I'll just put in the plug, become a subscriber for those 10 to 15% of the listeners who are not yet subscribers, just by going to loatoday.net and following the steps, because it'll set you right up in about a minute. But if you're not a subscriber and you're trying to follow the schedule, then the best thing to do is just keep watching for the information that I'll be putting onto social media. And watch us on the YouTube channel. Actually, YouTube is also a good way to find out what's happening with the new schedule, because then you'll be able to see us as we're doing these and also hear as we're announcing the changes. And Alex, you always do the YouTube better, so tell people how to do the YouTube.
All right. You go to YouTube and you search LOA Today podcast videos. And once you see our smiling faces, you go down and hit the subscribe button. Next to the subscribe button, there is a little silver bell. And when you click the silver bell, make sure you click always, so you will always be notified when we go live.
I'm thinking Christmas music and silver bells. No,
silver bells. I love that song.
It's a great song.
I can't wait for Christmas.
We're in September already. Well,
I know. I just want the holiday. I don't want the weather, though.
Don't want the weather. Okay.
Yeah. No, I'm not the white Christmas type of person.
I like white Christmas. I just don't want it to be white the rest of the winter. But that's
facts.
Doesn't
like
quite
let's take a picture for the gram and then let's set this whole weather thing up.
Gotta have Norman Rockwell. That's what it is.
Yeah.
But anyway, before we got started, Joel made kind of an offhand comment, and it occurred to me that it really is actually a pretty good topic. Most often, we're talking here about how to achieve abundance, whether it be abundance of money or abundance of relationships or abundance of health or whatever it might be. Mm-hmm. But what happens when the abundance rolls over and you can't handle it? It's an overflow of abundance. And that's what Joel, you were talking about that. I mean, it could actually get to the point where it's overwhelming. What do you do?
Well, we've seen this. I've seen this over the years. When I first got into private practice, or just when there was one point in my life where things were going, and my life's always going really well, but I had started a COO of a company. Within that same week, my son Justin, he moved in from foster care, and I started the process of adopting him. And, I was operating my private practice while being CEO of a company. And I realized I had brought so much into my life that I actually had to put the brakes on it a little bit and said, okay, things are going in no way complaining, but it was just the opposite of what I experienced for so long I have so much. And then the more and more kept coming, and I'm like, okay, there's a balance of this that I want to seek, because I don't want to over manifest. And what I mean by that is the responsibility attached with what I was bringing into my life was I wanted to do it well, and I also didn't want to get into a negative return state. So
right.
where I was spending so much energy, and then I start dreading. I don't dread going to week. I don't dread everything I don't dread anything in my life. If I don't want to go to work, I love that. I love that I don't dread anything in my life. But when I put so much on my plate, then I can find myself going, oh gosh, that's a little too much. So, but being able to allow yourself to step back and realize the spigot goes both ways. We often turn the spigot on full blast, but sometimes you have to narrow it down.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes you have to slow it down. It kind of reminds me I don't know if both of you guys saw all the Harry Potter movies, but the last Harry Potter movie where they're in the Gringotts vault trying to find one of the Horcruxes, and the end stuff starts multiplying. You got all this treasure that's piling up, practically burying them. That's kind of what we're talking about. You have so much abundance, it just buries you.
Yeah.
And so it's good to have a strategy on how to deal with that. Interesting point that you can actually use the same method for creating less as you can for creating more. We know that. I mean, we know that just through the fact that so many of us end up creating less before we have the more. And so we're frustrated by that. But that's really what you're talking about, Joel. You're talking about creating a little bit less and achieving a balance. And maybe that's really the word of the day is balance. Mm-hmm. How do you achieve balance? How do you get to balance? It starts inside, doesn't it?
It does. And my balance would be different than another person's balance. That's always that's something to look at. There's people that while I spend 8 hours to 9 hours every day talking with people, or I talk literally for 8 or 9 hours a day. So there are days where my balance is I would just don't want to talk. I just I'm not retreating. It's just take my time, go have dinner by myself sometimes. That's a nice thing to be able to do. Yes. And it's just so the balance is we're always creating. And I believe that we're always creating. The law of attraction is constantly in action, creating. The secret is the secret, no pun. The secret within the process is to understand the balancing act of which way you go. I know I work with many families of exceptional wealth. I had to, as I got into this field, I had to understand, I always had my idea of what wealthy is, but wealthy is one thing, but abundance of wealth or extreme wealth is something that I interact with a lot of people with extreme wealth, like hundreds of millions of dollars, not just a few dollars. And I am baffled over, not now, but so many people with every family that I work with, that has, say, over $100 million is almost always debilitated by the money. You think that, and everybody listening go, oh yeah, I like that problem, but the money itself, it creates, there's distrust within the family, there's family drama, there's always, there's always an argument. There's a recent article, when I say recent, within the last year or two, that they did a survey on what amount of money is the right amount, where the people are happiest. Wow. And it lied depending on, the number really depended on where we live, because a certain amount of money in New York City is not near as much money, but in general, when you look at inflation adjusted and cost of living adjusted between $75,000 and $100,000 a year is considered that wheelhouse where people are really the happiest. Interesting. And it makes sense, because in the article when I say, look, it's enough money to do stuff. It's enough money to have, you're not struggling to pay the electric bill. You're not struggling, but it's not enough money that you don't need to go to work, and needing to do these things does give you some purpose. And so it's just the right amount and then up anything over, where people are making over $1 million a year, then you start to see the excess that comes, the excesses that come along with that, and how they become debilitating. So it's a really interesting study that the happiest group was that $75,000 to $100,000 category, because there's enough there, but it's not so much where it becomes debilitating. And with the law of attraction, we always are assuming that there isn't, and I'm all about having as much money as you want to have. It isn't so much a money thing, but when you have the stuff attached to it, like, I don't want to be working more than 45 hours a week. That's just my number. It's what I like, and other people say, well, that's even too much, but I enjoy what I do, and probably 10 of those hours I'm able to do them from home, on the telephone so that they don't seem as cumbersome. So it's a number I like, but there are weeks where I'm trying to get caught up and I'm doing 55 or 60 hours, and that becomes, I notice that as, okay, I really need to slow down here. So again, finding your balance and then using the law of attraction as literally I view it as a spigot, turn it on or off or slow it down or whatever. And it really works. I mean, I like right now I have so much going on. I'm trying to say, okay, I need to back it down just a little bit. And then I will. And then if I find myself, okay, well, that's a little too low, I can always turn it right back up. But it is you're always manifesting, you're always attracting, you're always creating. And what that is all about what you're feeling and the perspective attached to it. But I find it amazing. I find it that for so long I used to look at it only in one direction, but you can see, wow, it can create the other side too.
Well, let me raise a question for you guys. Do you think there really is such a thing as a perfect balance? And the reason I ask that is I look at concepts like normal or median or whatever, and you never find anybody who actually is truly normal. You never find anybody who's actually truly average, who's truly median. They're, above average, below average. You almost never find somebody who's just right on that cusp, on that middle point. And the same thing is going to be true, I think, with being in perfect balance. But what do you guys think? Am I off base here, or is, being in perfect balance within yourself really achievable?
I think you can be balanced. I don't know about perfect balance. I don't think anything's perfect, but it's, within reason. I think that, as long as you're content and happy, that's all that really matters. So as long as you can work that out for yourself, good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, I'm sort of the same sort of, again, this will sound a little condescending maybe, but the perfect balance is simply your perspective. My perfect balance is that, there is a perfect balance when you believe it's a perfect balance. Now, you may look at my life and go, Joel, you're in the gym too much. You work too much. you do too much, education online. You do, and so there's people that in my life say, your brain keeps going too much for me. You exhaust me. I've had people tell me that. And I go, that's great, but that is my balance. I am happiest like that. So I can't tell you what your perfect balance is.
Right.
It's, so to me, the perfect balance is achievable, but it's not achievable in the traditional sense. It's not a static thing. It's always a moving thing.
Exactly.
And you wake up. Today, every day is going to have some type of challenge or something attached to it that you didn't plan for. So if you're looking at balance being, I want totally calm and nothing to challenge me, then no, that's not attainable. But if I'm looking at, yes, I want balance and being able to handle whatever comes my way, then I've obtained that. And, it's something that you look at and you become very comfortable. One of the things that I'm fascinated about always, when I discuss this, is when I have a question, I like to ask a 10-year-old because they tend to have an opinion and most often see it through a lack of filter, which I enjoy. So one of the neighbor kids the other day was out, and I don't know where he came from. He's just some random neighbor kid. I don't know exactly which one he was. And there was a bunch of them out on my porch looking at Justin's new bearded dragon, and they were talking about it. And we now have 2 bearded dragons. And so I said, well, yeah, we're getting to be too many bearded dragons. And this kid goes, well, how many bearded dragons is too many? And I go, well, it's all about perspective. And he goes, well, what's your perspective? And I said, well, 2 is about too many. And so I started this discussion with this 10-year-old, and he goes, well, he said, well, some days 2 would be too many, but other days 2 wouldn't be enough. And I go, that's a brilliant statement that you said that.
I love
now,
that.
We were talking bearded dragons, and so there are going to be clearly it's like too many cats. Yes, it's easy to obtain that. Right. But from his perspective, I mean, he was able to see, he was having a discussion like it isn't the number of bearded dragons that matter. It's your perspective that day of the bearded dragon. If you're super stressed and you got to get to the store, you got to buy the food or whatever for the reptile there, you got a lot going on, then two bearded dragons is too many. But if it's something that you're enjoying, so again, it's a fluid perspective, and it took a 10-year-old to help sort of point that out.
I think also it points to the fact that true balance really has nothing to do with what's going on outside of your life. True balance has to do with what's going on with yourself, your internal dialogue, your internal process.
Absolutely.
That's really the only balance that counts. And what happens outside is just kind of a reflection of what's going on inside. But more importantly, what's going on inside. No, go ahead.
Yeah. When you use someone else's scale to determine your balance is when we get off,
Yeah.
Right.
That's the problem. When I look at, for example, my relationship statuses and stuff over the years, that's been a wild journey unto itself.
Who are you telling?
Yeah. And so what I've learned what has worked for me, I figured out there's other people that look at me and go, oh my goodness, how could that doesn't seem like that would be a fulfilling relationship. I see a young lady that lives in Charlotte. We live 4 hours apart. We see each other a couple times a month. We talk 2 or 3 times. That's perfect. That's a perfect balance for me. It's what I need. There's other people that are horrified by that, going, oh my goodness, and it's me. It's what I have come up with.
Right.
So,
right.
And so I can't look at someone else and like I've had people come and say, do you think I'm out of balance? And I go, that's an irrelevant question. Do you think you're out of balance?
Right.
Because I'm not there to, tell you what your balance should be. You have to figure out your balance, and I can help you obtain what that balance is. And that's always the reverse engineering of all this. Like, Alyx and you like all these shows and stuff. Well, it's not one of my things that I'm into, but I have no negative approach or thoughts about the way it's something you obviously enjoy and love. I'm all into that. Now it's not my world, but that's not, we've gotten to, our point has gotten to be, well, if you're not doing it my way, you're doing it wrong. That's the opposite of this. It's the individuality of all this is what matters.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. The individuality of this is how all of us achieve the things we really want in life. It is interesting how often many of us spend time and energy focusing on what's wrong with everybody else, though. I have to say that's a fascinating thing. a whole lot of attention is paid to that. Entertainment. Almost everything that's entertainment related is about, let's pay attention to what somebody else is doing and we'll criticize the heck out of
it. But they're set up for that. It's part of the negative bias that the media, and I'm not trying to sound the media, the evil media. No, it's at the end of the day, we've talked about it. The media has one mission. That's to sell advertising and to get people to, that's it. There's no other, it's not good or bad. It's just their job. So when they find out what people like, one of the things when they do these shows, they want people to act weird. Jerry Springer is worth $100 million because of that. I mean, he is one of the most wealthy people in the history of television because of literally going into trailer parks and finding the most bizarre folks to have them argue. And they encourage them to do all that. I mean, they have people there standing to, it's almost like, well, let's put them face to face, and they're expected to go swing on each other, and then Jerry will end with a nice little quote at the end, and we'll repeat it again tomorrow. It's a great formula. Now, I don't watch it. I find it, but on some level, it's just a different version of what Survivor is, or I don't know what it is.
It's true.
Yeah. Well, no,
I'm personally more of a Maury fan, but
well, whatever.
Yeah. But what they do is on these shows, they intentionally create the conflict, and then the audience is then attracted to the negativity of it, and it helps. It does help when people say, "Oh, well, at least I'm not as screwed up as this dude."
Yes.
Or okay, this young man who's in love with his stepfather. and the chickens next door on Jerry. Well, I'm not near as crazy as that dude, you know? And so
oh God, yes. That's all reality shows are, is me sitting there going, good God. Thank God that's not me. Oh.
Yeah. Well, but that's where the money is, because because most people's lives are not, you know, we talked about a couple of these reality people last week that were indicted, or a couple weeks ago, that were indicted on tax charges and all this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I happen to have some insight to that situation that I didn't even know who they were at one point, but their show is not remotely reflective of their real life. It is, people say, it's just staged every bit of it's staged.
It's a scripted reality.
The backstory is staged. It's not an accurate backstory. All of this is created. So it is a different form of theater, and their names are real, but that's about it.
And I'm not even sure of that, to be honest.
Well, yeah, but you see that a lot. I mean, so they actually have psychologists on these shows when they're casting the shows, like the general reality shows, because their psychologist's job is to not get the most stable people, is to get the most opposite people who will conflict the most.
What an interesting job for a psychiatrist.
I'm not gonna lie, I did audition for a reality show once.
Did you really?
I did, yes. This is back in my acting days, and I was, you know, pretty much auditioning for everything that came to Boston. So they were going to do Bad Girls Club. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that reality show.
I'm not, no.
It's a mess. It's like Real World, except they take like the baddest chicks that like all they do is get drunk and fight. Like that's all they do all day. So, and they put them all together in a house. And you know, when women get together and get drunk, things happen. So that's what they're expecting. They're expecting the wild and craziness. So apparently I wasn't wild and crazy enough for the show, so I didn't get picked. But it was interesting.
Well, congratulations, first of all.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I've never been congratulated on my sanity before, but thank you.
I think it needs to be done more often, personally, but I don't know. That's just me.
We go years ago, and I forget the name of it was some lady in California that had a talk show, and they were doing a show on the gambling addiction. And I was actually contacted to be sort of the professional that goes and helps the person facilitate toward treatment. You see that a lot on shows, you know. So I was interested, obviously, and then the company I was working for at the time would have benefited, and you know, it'd be like free advertising, and we were going to provide free treatment for the person that was a gambler. So I mean, that takes place all the time.
Yes, yes.
So when I was getting ready and preparing for it, they wanted to create this scene where they were going to give this compulsive gambler money to go to a casino to gamble, and then they wanted me to go in and do an intervention. Now it's all staged, and you know, he was going to resist, and they were going to have a couple of big burly guys carry him out and all of this, and I'm like, oh hell no. No.
Joel's not here for the drama. Joel is not here for the drama.
No, I said, we're talking about a debilitating, life-threatening addiction,
right?
And you want to put on a sideshow with that? I said, no, right. I will talk to this young man. He'll get a quality, free treatment in exchange for our. And they're like, oh no, that won't sell.
No, you're trying to sell health,
really? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm like, I wouldn't do it. And of course, they found somebody else to do it, but I wasn't going to do it. And so you see that, and you see that. So it is clearly, and I'm not angry with them for doing that. I'm just pointing out that this is what happens. This is how life goes on. Here's how, that's what we're attracted to, because it's the norm. The number of people every year killed in car wrecks compared to the number of people killed in airplanes or, air accidents are just so, it's not even it's just way out there.
Yeah.
It's such a big discrepancy. Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the most big metropolitan areas will average 5 automobile deaths a week kind of thing. And
That's crazy.
and then, yeah. And so you see, and they don't even make the newspaper. I mean, they might make a little blip, there's a fatal accident or whatever. They're there. However, if there's a plane crash, breaking news, news.
Right.
A plane crash in Atlanta, there's 17 people dead. And by no means am I minimalizing that, but because it is something that hits on a fear or people's fear of flight, it reinforces the idea. Instead of saying that same day there were 37,000 flights in the United States that went off without
to their
a hit.
destination. Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody, and the odds of being killed, even the year that the unfortunate that evil took place in 2001, where the people were killed on the plane, even when you factor in those people, and you even added the people that were killed in the World Trade Center to the overall equation, it still was far less than the number of traffic accidents.
Oh, yeah. It's true.
It's crazy statistic, but it's true.
Yeah, but yet what sells is the plane crashes. I mean, CNN has their own aviation expert ready to go on board. The moment there's a plane crash, well, yes, I'm this aviation expert, and the planes will appear to have fallen from the sky, and we'll figure out more why in a little bit.
As opposed to.
And and then they'll show, well, this is a 737. And here's why. Let me speculate wildly on what happened, and then in 6 months we'll have the results and recant what we're saying today. But they're looking for that. I have this conspiracy theory that is not even really a conspiracy theory. Like the storm that's turning, and what a horrible storm this is, and what it did to the Bahamas is rough. But the Weather Channel, I think I know they make a lot more money during storms. Yeah. And they also awfulize the scenario that I heard this one theory that a meteorologist before the Weather Channel said this storm is going to, they had the evidence the storm was more than likely going to turn north and then eventually northeast. And while it was going to affect the coast of the United States, it certainly wasn't going to be going across Florida. The Weather Channel, I wouldn't be shocked. I have no proof of this, but the Weather Channel, the later they hold off on that information, the more they have people tuned in.
Exactly.
And yeah. So but I did see this meteorologist say the Weather Channel is delaying this information because it's prime time. If they don't release the information tomorrow, they already have the model that this is going to be going up and turning right. And so now, whether it is or not, I don't know. But you think about it, all the businesses that benefit from these storms coming, the grocery stores and Florida evacuated, and the area that originally evacuated, it was never really in threat, but it's like. It was pointed toward Palm Beach in the beginning. Well, it never even got close to Palm Beach. It's going to get closer to the Carolinas. And I'm not minimalizing a storm, and I'm not minimalizing the idea that we need to be prepared. But the awfulization of things is a way to get things to sell, and that's the opposite side of the law of attraction. It really is.
I'm not sure if it's the opposite side, but it's the side. Everything involves law of attractions for sure.
Right.
I think this is really more the side of, do you really want that? And I would say there are people who do want that. And there's a perfect example associated with that storm. There's one of the very, very minor candidates on the Democratic side. Her name is Marianne Williamson. She's an author of self-help books, has been writing self-help books for a long time. And she had the temerity to say that people should focus their brain power and their mind power on helping to move the storm away from populated areas. And she got creamed for it. Why? Because she was daring to propose something that was, first of all, outside of the norm of human understanding. And second of all, it took away from all people who were saying, whoa, wait a minute, we got to awfulize this stuff. You can't find a way to solve a problem. You're going to ruin people's lives by doing that. That was basically the essence of what their complaint was.
That's crazy.
Well, and I find it ironic, a lot of those same critics would have no problem on Sunday sitting in church praying the storm misses.
Oh, of course.
Of course.
Seriously.
Yeah, it's like, she's crazy for suggesting that. However, we're going to pray to God that this storm misses. Again, I don't want to get into a religious, going back and forth kind of thing.
Well, it doesn't have anything to do with that, really. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't. But they'll make it about that if you allow it. But it does. Yeah, it doesn't have. But you get the point. There's an energy of that takes place, and
right.
They'll argue to say, well, God can move the storm. Well, if you consider the power of that, and the power of prayer and prayer of thought, it's pretty much the exact same thing we're talking about. So it's a perspective, and it's just amazing to see how one side views it. And she was creamed by it, and she's made to look crazy, and and that's just what we do because it fits outside of the norm.
And also it fits inside the norm to criticize.
Yeah.
I mean, criticism is that's the basis for all this entertainment stuff we've been talking about. It's the basis for politics. It's the basis for religions. You mentioned religion. That's, the basis for that too. It's the basis for just about everything that human beings pay attention to. It's no wonder we spend so much time criticizing. We're taught every single different way to do so. In fact, there's something wrong with you if you don't have a critical mindset.
I mean, you can have a critical mindset, or you can also choose not to waste your energy on dumb stuff.
Well, I spent a lot of my life learning how to have a critical mindset, and I'm looking back on saying, boy, did I waste a whole lot of time on that.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Don't waste your energy. Like, no.
But nevertheless,
did it serve you to have the critical? That's the piece that when you realize, did it accomplish what you wanted it to accomplish?
Well, it served me, but not in the way I expected. It served me to help me understand what it is that I didn't like. It did that really well.
Right. Yeah, and that's good. But that's when you understood your perspective of it all, and you're able to say, I want to be able to see it this way, do it this way. And so that helps. I mean, it helped you see what didn't work. It helped you see it. Yeah.
And it also helped me to understand eventually I didn't want to be like that anymore.
Right.
I really didn't enjoy that.
I've seen a lot of that. Yeah, I've seen that a lot of change in you in that area since I've known you. How you've adjusted that thought.
Absolutely.
Because especially with politics and stuff, you really have. You went from one side to sort of that away from it totally, and you were very into that before.
And it's not like I don't pay attention. I still pay attention,
right?
But I don't pay attention to the what do they call it, the tug of war. I don't pay attention to that part. That part I could care less about. To me, it's more like watching the horse race and saying, "Well, I think I can predict which horse is going to win."
Yeah,
that's fun. I enjoy that.
Exactly. But you see it differently now. It doesn't have the power over it may have had over you before. You see it from a different. You're still fascinated by it.
Yeah.
But you there's almost no attachment to it anymore.
It has no power over me anymore. It had a lot of power over me before, and I gave it all that power without realizing it.
Yeah.
But that power that I was giving away was debilitating me. And that was where I really learned. I said, oh, geez, I really don't want to apply this critical mind. Yeah, is it helpful to have a critical mind? Sure. Yeah, that is helpful. But does that mean I want to use it all the time? It's kind of like saying, well, yeah, it's helpful to have a knife. It doesn't mean I want to use it for everything.
Or what was that?
Exactly.
The bee that said in bee movies that the lady asked him, well, why don't you fly everywhere? And he was like, well, why don't you run everywhere?
Yes, right. This is another area of balance. Balance can take many different forms. Exactly. I mean, it all starts inside, but we are manifestors. And so we live in a physical world. And in that physical world, we want to manifest certain things, and we don't want to manifest other things. That's part of why we're here. Well, for the purpose of living here in the physical world, probably the best reason to be in balance is so we can do all those things.
Mm-hmm. I feel like let's go
right back to the balance again.
I was going to say, when you were talking about how you balance your politic obsession, that's kind of how reality TV works. It's like you just saying you know how to pick the right horse and see who's going to win. Mm-hmm. That's where certain shows on reality TV, that's the excitement for that too. It's like you're watching The Bachelorette and you're like, okay, I want that guy to win. Mm-hmm. And now you have to sit here and wait for the whole season to see if that guy wins. And all the drama that comes along with it, that's just a bonus. All the pettiness and all the fighting and the drinks and tables being thrown, that's your treat, you know?
It reminds me of the movie, what was it called? Finding Forrester. It came out in the 1990s. Sean Connery.
See that?
And in that movie, he helps a young black kid. He lives in the Bronx.
Yeah.
And has lived there all his life. And this black kid breaks into his apartment on a dare to, show off to his friends, and ends up getting tutored by him on how to be a better writer. And in the course of their lessons, so to speak, at one point, the kid says to him, "Why do you read the National Enquirer? I mean, I would think you'd be reading the New York Times."
Right.
And Sean Connery's answer is, "Well, I do read the New York Times. That's for dinner. But the National Enquirer, that's dessert."
Yeah. Exactly.
And like most desserts, it's not good for you, but
but it sure is enjoyable.
It's good, yeah. So balance is going to be a different thing for different people.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's why, Joel, your point that you made pretty much at the top of the show is so important. And Alyx, you echoed it. The idea that balance is not a static thing. It's going to change. It's fluid, and it's going to be different for every person.
And every day.
And every day. Every hour of the day.
Yeah.
And that's what makes the difference. And when you understand that what is balanced today is maybe not going to be balanced tomorrow. But we have the ability to adjust on the fly. What I wanted in life 20 years ago is not remotely what I want in life now. Mm-hmm. And what would be balanced 20 years ago is not balanced now. So it does evolve. It does change. The idea that a child's brain, the way it works, it changes as time goes on, as we get young adults into adulthood, and even as we age, the way the brain works. I think for some people, their peak brain activity is working. I see that. I really feel my brain is better today than it was 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's just, I incorporated. I've slowed it down. I meditate. I have, understand the law of attraction. I do these various techniques that, I just think I have a much clearer mindset, and it's not so confusing as compared to what it was when I was younger. Mm-hmm. As I've aged, I thought, wow, this is, most people think, there's a decline in that processing. I find there to be an increase. Again, a different balance and a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, that perspective truly is everything. Hey, there was something else I kind of ran into it today and started playing with it. It's been around for quite some time, but I hadn't done anything with it. But we often on this show talk about different ways that we can work on ourselves to achieve that balance that we're talking about. We want to have that perspective of the perspective that we feel is the best one for ourselves and the one that meets our needs the most.
Yep.
Toward that end, we learn how to take control of our thought processes. We learn how to imagine and visualize and be in the feeling of the moment so that we can attract what we want. Mm-hmm. But we also, Cindy and I were talking about this yesterday, we also, as human beings, end up spending a lot of time getting distracted by things that we don't want. So we develop these processes. We develop things to do to help us get our minds more under our own conscious, deliberate control day to day so that we can be focusing where we want to. And I realized this morning that there is a tool out there that we can use exactly this way. I never thought of it this way, but I should have because it has a very key word in it. The key word is story. On Facebook, for those people who use Facebook, they have your story, a place where you can type in your stuff or, key in your stuff about what it is that you want to talk about. That's part of your story, which is exactly what we talk about as deliberate creators. We say, if we're going to be deliberate creators, we got to change our story. So it occurred to me, well, is there a use in taking this Facebook function of recording your story, which most people don't even see, and even if they do see it, it disappears from their timeline within 24 hours. You're the only one who ever sees the archive of it.
Yeah.
Why not use that as a way to tell your new imagined story? And so I actually started doing that today. But I'm curious to see what you guys think about that. Have you ever thought about using the Facebook story feature to change your own story?
I haven't changed my own story. However, it's ironic that you bring this up. In the last couple of days, I have been putting up positive posts about myself. Just to, because I'm thinking also, this is how I'm feeling in the moment. And then also reminding myself, okay, in a year, when this comes back around on this day, you can remember how happy you were and what a good person you are at the same time. So I've been posting, I think 2 days ago I posted, I'm a unicorn. I'm a rare breed.
well, that's a reimagining. That's basically imagining what you want.
It's true. But, and then yesterday I posted, some song lyrics that I felt, resonated with myself. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've been in that sense, I've been doing that. I'm not one to do a lot of posting of stories unless it's about like what we're doing on the podcast or whatever that, unless it's business wise, I don't actually do the stories, but, cause I feel like too much saturation, it gets to be too much.
Well, I was thinking more just in terms of doing it for myself, for a person taking advantage of the fact that your story feature is pretty much for you. Very rarely does anybody else see it. So it's a way of recording it. You don't have to track it. You don't have to put it into create a text file. You don't have to create a log somewhere. It's just there. And that's why I thought it might be useful.
The problem is on Facebook is everyone gets notified when you've posted your story. And it's like, especially if you haven't done it ever or in a while, it's like, Alyx has posted a story. You better go watch it.
No,
and then
I see.
Tells you how many people have watched it and how many people liked it and all that stuff.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah. So it's like, if you want to be a personal diary, don't do that.
well, to me, that's why it's all about using it as a way to tell your news story, because the news story is about what you like.
Right.
It's not about what you're criticizing. It's about what you prefer and what you're trying to attract into your life. So maybe it actually is a way of focusing your attention. Okay, I know that other people can see this, so I'm going to tell a story that I really, really like.
Yeah. But it's also encouraging people to, yes, you want to fake it till you make it, but you also don't want to be so fake that you don't recognize your own self.
Well, it's part of the process of learning to be a deliberate creator.
Yeah.
We're all trying.
It's a fine line.
We're trying to find that balance once again.
Yeah.
What's too far for us? What was too far for me, say 6-7 years ago when I first started doing a show with Joel, is a completely different thing from what's too far for me now.
Right.
Back then, Joel, you can affirm this. I had trouble just even imagining anything that was outside of the realm of reality. It just seemed too impossible. Now I'm stretched beyond
Lord,
that.
Yeah. Walt. Yeah. Walt has gone from one extreme to changing the weather. So we have, that's a big gap there to cover. So I like that. But one of the story concept, whether it's on Facebook or not, but that is the point. You create a story that you want to live. And what's unique is one of the things that I don't use the story mode for is exactly what Alyx said. One of my most annoying things is when I get a notification that somebody has a new story posted. And I'm like, okay. But also when you post a story, there's not that I worry remotely what anyone will say, but there's always a balance of, well, he's just full of crap because he's making up this stuff as he goes. That's not his real life. And so posting, feeling, and again, it's not what other people think, but I really believe I have created stories about my life when there was no way for those stories to come true, and they became true. So it's a very effective tool no matter how you get there, whether you use the Facebook thing or not, but creating a story, one of the things that I have had happen in the last couple of weeks, and I mentioned this slightly, and there's always these things that keep coming up for me. One of my clients is a professional athlete, and a few weeks ago, and I don't think I told the story on air, and please stop me if I do, but he was talking, he was talking about, he was in town visiting, and he has overwhelming anxiety that, it just really prevents him from doing things. So, and being a professional athlete, that's clearly not a good thing to have when it gets to the level of debilitating.
Right.
And there's the medications that can be effective are expressly forbidden by professional athletes have in their body. So there's a lot of this going on. So I'm like, I don't have an answer. I mean, I'm always about doing the exercise, but I also know there's levels of depression and anxiety that can't be approached that way, medication or, so I have never wanted to judge anyone else's journey. So I said, he said, I thought you'd have something. I said, look, I have heard of, and I'm the emotional freedom technique, the tapping, on the meridians. And I said, I don't know if this stuff works. I've heard some people say it really works. I've been trained in it, but I'll be honest with you, I'm very skeptical, because it does, that's one of those areas I just never thought worked too well. He said, well, it won't hurt. We got some time. Can we run through it? So I ran through a series of the tapping or the emotional freedom technique. It takes about 20 minutes to do it. And he laughed and I laughed and said, yeah, it's sort of silly. And then he goes, yeah. And so, he said, well, I do feel the anxiety is released. He said, but obviously it's the fact that we're talking and I was still,
Right.
So I get this call like really early the next day from him. And he goes, I was sort of concerned and I answered and he said, well, I said, what's up? And he said, I woke up today. I slept better last night than I ever slept. I woke up today with no anxiety. And so I was like, I'd actually forgotten about the tapping idea.
Yeah.
So I said, well, did you get a new medication? What happened? He said, no, I think it was that tapping thing we did. So again, I'm like, really? It wasn't, I was like, I said, well, maybe it's just, I said, I hope it is. I said, but I just can't believe it would be that effective. So he said, well, I'm going to do it multiple times a day. And he did some research online. So I did mention it to a few other people and I'm getting the same response from it. So I said, okay, I need to step back and look at it from a whole different thing. So there's a book called tappingsolutions.com. No, not Tapping Solutions. There's also emotional freedom technique. So, of course, as I do with everything, I then took classes to become certified in it even more. I had a basic certification, but I went and got the advanced certification. And I started using it, and not that I deal with anxiety, but it can be used in multiple areas. And it's an incredibly effective technique. And when you add that technique to, it's in combination with the energy healing concept overall about the body. When you start with sort of a mindfulness and then some meditation and some tapping, you can create a direct pathway to the subconscious, which changes a lot of things. So it within that spectrum of what we're talking about, it is one of the tools that I really highly recommend right now that I have been super skeptical about, and I've known about this for years, but I have never really gone all in on it, and until I've seen the results. And of the people that have used it so far, I've heard no one that has said it's not been incredibly effective.
Well, I can't say I'm terribly surprised. It's not something that I've gotten into myself to a great deal, but I've certainly interviewed other people who use it. Louis D'Souza, for instance, who does the Monday show with me, uses it, and there are other people I've talked to as well. I think Linda Armstrong has used it, and I think Cindy Chavez has used it as well. But it reminds me of the book that Joe Dispenza wrote, You Are the Placebo.
Right.
Just the title of it. Because the title of the book says it all. The title basically says whatever you decide is going to make you better is going to make you better.
And that is my belief, and that's one of my favorite books of all time. He's also a big advocate for tapping and these other energy healing type things. And my point is, it's not even the tapping; it's understanding your perspective of where you're at and when you can learn to figure out the techniques that can help you achieve what you're trying to achieve and help you and access the subconscious on the subconscious mind. And these numbers are way off, but you'll get the point. The subconscious mind processes like 40 million bytes per second or something crazy. The conscious mind the conscious mind does like 40 bytes.
Yeah, it's really small.
Wow.
It's a tiny, it's just this tiny, so the part of the brain that you have no access to that controls everything, you know, when I get in my car and when I get off the phone, I'm going to be driving to work. And when I'm driving to work, I will then, you know, I won't remember the drive in unless some event happens. You know what I mean? I'm driving to, yeah, exactly. And that's what the subconscious mind is. It's autopilot. When you first drive a car, I have the nightmares of my mother yelling and screaming at me that, you know, I'm going too fast. I'm going, Mom, I'm doing 16. So, you know, I remember all of that. Well, I had a lot of stuff to remember. You got to check your stuff right now. You know, you get in, you put on your seatbelt, hopefully you turn the key, you back up, you go, and it's uneventful until something happens. Then automatically the subconscious reacts, responds, and helps you hit the brake. Then the conscious mind says, okay, now I got to think and the conscious mind doesn't know the new route. Right. I mean, the subconscious mind doesn't know the new route. The conscious mind does. So you have to hand it off and say, okay, I got to adjust now. So the conscious mind says, now I'll be able to reason. The subconscious mind doesn't reason. It only knows how to feel, and based on the experiences has been programmed. So the law of attraction, it's a long way to get to where I'm trying to get here, but the law of attraction, it responds to what you're feeling. And those real feelings come from the subconscious thought. So how you feel about something, when you don't realize there's chains of events. I have things that happened to me as a child, and you know, not some traumatic thing that a lot of people would view, but just things that I've never forgotten that were etched in my memories that at the time were traumatic, or my perception was traumatic. So they get stored there. So when similar situations happen, I'm sort of, my subconscious mind makes the connection and then puts the stress factor involved. And I'm putting out the anxiety. Real quick story. I know we're getting a little short on time. I had my mom and sister and I were one time were basically homeless, and we were walking on the side of the road after a Cub Scout meeting, waiting for her friend to pick us up. And I remember being 6 years old, my 4-year-old sister and my mom with a suitcase on the side of the road with no place to live at 6. And so I know that. And so I remember thinking how odd that was, and I was picking up my mom's energy of extreme fear and all of that. I don't remember even how that night ended. Obviously, everything ended up fine. However, I remember that. So if I get into a situation where something, or I see something, and that subconscious memory, which is a very strong memory, comes into play, I will have unexplained anxiety, even though it has nothing to do with me. One of the reasons that I probably adopt children from foster care is I don't like the idea of kids not having a place to go. And that probably, you know, it's a factor in that. Now, I am not traumatized and saying I'm debilitated by all that, but I do see the connection that, and there's millions of those things that, you know, don't have that much impact. But when you get a feeling, and you don't know what that feeling is, or why you're feeling that way. And so these are important things. So you understand that the subconscious mind is the part of the mind that is connected to the energy field that law of attraction works in. And you don't have direct access to the subconscious mind. That's why we do these strategies of visualizing or telling a different story. If I tell that story long enough and with intensity, that story eventually gets imprinted on the subconscious mind, and the law of attraction responds to it. Boom. That's how it works.
Boom.
Boom. It's interesting, too, as you were describing the early parts of that story, talking about how much more powerful the subconscious mind is than the conscious mind, or faster, I guess, how much faster it is. I had an analogy come to my head that the unconscious mind is kind of like a 5G cell phone mobile network at 5 bars, and the conscious mind is a 1G network with 1 bar.
Right.
And, you know, and so all the bandwidth is on the unconscious mind side. So it's no wonder we spend so much time focused on, okay, so what can I do about this runaway train called my unconscious mind?
Oh, all the time.
And that's what the strategies are for too. But there's also the positive side. I mean, Joel, you hinted at it very quickly as you did a little disclaimer, but we can actively take control of that subconscious mind by retraining it, by giving it stuff that it really feeds our soul. It feeds where we want to go. And like you pointed out just a moment ago, we can also benefit from the parts that we don't like. So even if there was an experience when we were 6 years old where we had no place to live, it turned into a positive because we turned it into a positive.
Right.
That's the key.
Well,
That's the takeaway.
That's the $1 million answer in all of this. This is that event is real. That event has an effect on me, but my perspective of it is what I get to allow. Mm-hmm. That's what, that's what I can make it work on my behalf when I understand the psychology and the connection of where it's stored. That event I was not harmed. I was not, it was totally a fear-based event. Mm-hmm. No one harmed me that night. There was no, I had a perception of danger that wasn't there. But it's something that was there. So it did get stored, but when I'm able to identify it, so when, I now can see, I can see a scenario where, a family could be in that situation. Immediately I have an anxiety that I'm relating to that I wouldn't have known without the knowledge of understanding where that's connected. And that's the gift of it is I understand it. There are things out there taking place that I don't remember that it helps. That's why it's good to really sort of do an inventory of all this stuff and understand where it goes, because every behavior or every activity in the body is responding to something. Mm-hmm. And it's the law of attraction is constantly creating, and it's creating. Imagine that 40 million bytes per second that the subconscious mind works at. That's how fast the law of attraction is. It's in an interface that we don't understand. Mm-hmm. It's happening there. Our conscious mind cannot comprehend it because of the slow processing speed of the conscious mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how cool it is that the more that we spend our energy and our focus and our attention on rewriting, on reframing, on changing the story the way we need the story to be so that we can feel more comfortable and we can feel more, not comfortable perhaps, but more at ease with ourselves about what happened. Mm-hmm. Then we can get to the point where it actually benefits us, like it tremendously benefited you and a whole bunch of kids who were, caught up in the foster care system. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it's pretty cool stuff.
Yeah. It's what we get to choose. And that's sort of the life hack that changes everything. And my trauma surrounding a lack of money over my life and all this, it actually learned how to use that to my advantage. But it takes a while, and that's the beauty of the law of attraction is you have, it doesn't care, as we say every week, what you're doing. Or what you're, the law of attraction doesn't work. It doesn't care that you don't believe it works. It's at work anyway.
Right.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Which is valuable, I think, because I've become more and more aware every day of the fact that literally just by being alive, I am creating.
Yep.
And my mind is creating constantly. Mm-hmm. And it gives me, on the one hand, it gives me incentive to gain more and more direct ability to drive that, so to speak, to focus my attention on what I wanted to create. But it also gives me a disincentive. The disincentive is to stay away from that stuff I don't like anymore. It's a focusing mechanism. That's what focusing is. It's deciding what you're going to focus on. Focusing is, making clear the thing that you're going to focus on, and that it's a skill. It's a good skill to develop. Before we go, I want to make sure people find out actually most of our listeners already know this, but for those who don't know, how do they reach out to Joel Elston, the life coach, in case they need to talk to him? Because sometimes we need to talk privately rather than listening through a podcast.
JoelElston@gmail.com is the most effective way to do that. And just send me an email, and when I have the opportunity, I'll respond.
He does, too. It may take a few days, but guarantee he will respond.
It may take a few days, but I always respond. It may take a few days. Is right.
It's true. It's true. It's very, very true. He's consistent.
I always I laugh at somebody will email and say, "Did you get my email? Did you get my email?" I'm like, "Oh, well, yes."
All 5 of them.
along with like 87 others.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And Alyx, you're working on the revisions for episode 2 of The Grass is Greener, so we're getting really close to being able to produce that episode. That's going to be fun.
Yes. It's more exciting every time I open my laptop. I'm just like, how did you get so good at this? Even my mother was like, you got this from me, right?
She's got to take some credit for it.
Yeah, like all the bad attributes you got. If you rob a bank, you got that from your father.
Your father, right? Yeah.
Everything else, not from me.
Well, that's going to be something good to look forward to. So, and I can hardly wait for us to get started on the recording of it. But in any event, we will be doing this on Thursdays, or actually, we're not quite sure when the Thursday episode is going to be done. Joel and I still have to work that out, but it will happen. Joel will be on the show. Another reason to be a subscriber so that you can always find it out. So whenever it is that we're going to talk next, Joel, I look forward to it.
Me too. I look forward to talking again.
Absolutely. Alyx, I talk to you a couple times a week, so I know it'll be next Tuesday at the latest, probably before then.
Tuesday at the latest. It'll probably be later today, but okay.
Probably later today, yes, usually the way it is. But anyway, thank you. Thank you to our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.